I remained alive when I shouldn't have. He never rushed. He never made a sound. He would slice pieces from my arms and lay them on the ground as if sought in fabric. I used to have nightmares as a kid. Not the kind that fade when you sit up and remember where you are. Mine arrived the same way every time. Like a ritual, I couldn't stop. The floorboards would creak once, as if someone had placed a foot beside my bed. Then I would hear slow dripping, steady and patient, as if water were leaking from a tap inside the dark. I would hold my breath and count the drips and hope they would stop. They never did. After the dripping, he came. The grey man. He would just materialise out of nowhere, standing beside my bed, phasing in like something out of a sci-fi movie. If he stood up, I knew he would be taller than the doorframe. His skin was the colour of ash, and where his eyes should have been were just two empty pits. His mouth was a thin line that would sometimes open into a wide smile, showing rows of too many teeth. He would tilt his head and look at me like I was an item he was deciding whether to buy. He never climbed onto my bed like you hear in some sleep paralysis dreams. He would crouch low next to me, bring his face close to mine, and breathe in, as if he was smelling me the way you smell books you loved as a child. Then his long hand would slide down, and with an almost gentleness that made it worse, he would take my ankle and pull me under the bed. Under there was no carpet, no wood. There was a place that didn't belong in the house at all. The air was hot and thick. It tasted like coins left in your mouth too long. Heat rolled up from the ground, and it made my eyes water. He would drag me by my ankle along the rough dirt. It was pebbled with little shards and seeds, and it cut my back and arms. When I reached out to try and grab the walls, they were damp in a way that stung. They were coated with an acidic gloop that you could never wipe clean. The place itself smelled like old blood, and that sweet rot you notice when you walk past a bin on a hot day. There were insects everywhere. I couldn't see all of them, but I could hear them. A dry clicking sound from little legs, a soft buzzing of wings, the cautious rasp of mouth parts trying a new surface to see if it could be eaten. Behind us, there was nothing that looked like a way back home. There were tall, dark shapes made of the same hot dirt, shaped like pillars, but I knew they were bodies that had just forgotten how to be people. He would pick me up and place me on the chair like I was a prized possession. Then he would take a thin knife from the fold of his skin, and he would begin. He never rushed. He never made a sound. He would slice pieces from my arms and lay them on the ground as if sought in fabric. He would rest his palm on my chest and feel my heart speed up and slow down. He would take a strip from my cheek and watch the tear run round it. I begged him in the way children beg and promise to do better, but he'd just tilt his head as if memorizing the noise. He would never stop. He never showed any emotion, no joy, no anger. In those dreams, I remained alive when I shouldn't have. There were times when the only part of me left was my head. I could feel the dirt under my tongue. I could feel the insects trying the corners of my mouth and then changing their minds. I could smell the heat. I could see him as he bent close and for a moment set his forehead to mine. Then I would wake up with my jaw cramped and my throat raw from air I must have swallowed while I screamed without a sound. My parents did what they could. They never used words like cursed or haunted. They used words like specialist and appointment and therapy. I drew the grey man for a woman with a calm voice who didn't look at my drawings when I handed them over to her, but always took a moment before she turned to paper. I learned breathing exercises. I learned to plant my feet on the ground and list 5 things I could see The dreams didn't stop at once, but they frayed at the edges. Then they came less often, and I grew taller. I learned to put my hand on the bedroom light switch before I went to sleep, so I knew it was there. And when I left for college, the dreams, they didn't follow me. I told people I was a nervous kid who just grew out of it. That was mostly true. I'm an adult now. I pay my bills on time. I have a decent job. A flat that's more tidy than messy. And there's nothing in my life that looks like a horror story if you glance at it from the outside. Last week, I went to the fun fair with Beth. She's the sort of friend you can talk into trying food you don't recognize and rides you claim to hate. We wandered through the lights and the noise and the smell of hot oil. Then Beth's eyes fell on a fortune-teller's tent set up near the far fence. It looked like it had been pitched in a hurry. The canvases didn't match, the guy ropes were all assorted colours. It was dark inside and very quiet, as if sound didn't want to sit in there. Beth wanted to go right in, but I didn't. Not because I was scared, more that I didn't believe in this type of shite. But she said please, and it was the only thing there without a line, and I was thinking about donuts. The woman inside looked like she'd stepped straight out of a cliché. Shawls, bangles, long grey hair. But what caught me wasn't her. It was the bird. A white bird, perched on her shoulder. Beth smiled nervously. "Aw, a dove!" The woman didn't look up from her cards. "Not a dove," she said, her voice melodic. "A crow." I squinted. "It's white." That's when she finally met my eyes. Her smile, it didn't reach them. "Not everything white is innocent." Beth shivered, muttered something about it being pretty, and then sat down. She went first. The woman inside read her cards, asked her about her one true desire. Beth blushed and said something stupid about wanting a nice boyfriend. I laughed and muttered, "Jesus, at least make it achievable. Give the old bag a chance to fake it." Both of them turned and looked at me, the way teachers look at you, you know. Beth's turn ended with the rustle of a curtain of beads and the tiny chime of something metal. The woman lifted her eyes to me and asked me to sit. I didn't want to, but Beth gave me that look. The chair was lower than I expected. It made me feel like a child. The woman's hands were cool, and her thumbs were rough where she pressed them against my palms. I made another joke about props and smoke machines, but she didn't smile. "Do not insult what listens," she said. "Some things are bored enough to answer." I raised an eyebrow. She looked past me, and then at me, like a doctor waiting for you to say where it hurts. "I feel your resistance," she said kindly. "That's because this isn't real," I snapped back. "It's a joke. A tent in a mud pit fun fair with plastic beads on curtains. You're not communing with the universe. You're just scamming bored people out of pocket change." Her expression didn't shift. She simply tilted her head bird-like. The white crow ruffled its feathers, as though it had heard me. "Even a joke is heard somewhere." "Great," I muttered. "Tell the cosmos I said hi, then." Her lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. The crow shifted its claws against the shoulder, white feathers catching the lantern glow like bone. "You'll laugh until it answers," she muttered. Beth shot me a look, the kind that said, "Don't start." I leaned back in the chair and folded my arms. "Fine, go on then, tell me my fortune, make it quick." The woman's gaze didn't waver. "When you mock the door," she said softly, "you invite whatever waits behind it to knock." Right. That's when she asked me my one true desire. I chilled for a minute. I didn't want to give the old woman a heart attack. I told her my life was fine. I told her I had enough money, enough work, enough friends, for the kind of person I am anyway. Then I said the only thing that had ever been an honest wish for me. I said I wanted no more bad dreams. Her eyes went soft and far away. She let go of my hands and traced circles on the tablecloth with one finger. Then she said a rhyme. I remember it almost exactly. "Grant this woman the power to see what's good and right and true. But where the light of goodness shines, the dark will see her too." I felt goosebumps on my arms. I covered it by rolling my eyes. I said something unkind about how she must do well on people desperate enough to be happy with a poem. She looked at me for a long time without blinking. "Do not anger what you can't see," she said. "It is patient. It can wait until you forget you spoke." We left. I had enough of that cryptic shit. I made a show of being hungry and moved the conversation to food. That night I dreamt I found a £50 note folded in the lining of my coat. In the dream it felt stiff and new, with the smell of ink and that slight waxy drag against my fingers. I didn't think anything of it and pretty much forgot the dream as soon as I woke up. But that day it was unusually cold for me. Bitterly cold. I fished in my closet for my winter jacket and slipped it on. Halfway to work I slipped my hands in my pockets for warmth and my fingers grazed something hard. I pulled it out. It was a red envelope with my name on the front, still sealed. I opened it cautiously and lifted a sparkly Christmas card from the paper. One side read, "Merry Christmas, lots of love, Grandma, kiss, kiss, kiss." And on the other, a neatly folded £50 note was stuck to the side of it with tape. I must admit, I was a bit like, no way, at first. But then I thought, people forget to open Christmas cards all the time, right? Just a coincidence. I wasn't impressed. The next night, I dreamt that the woman at work who collects complaints like stamps would call in sick. She did. I told myself that one was almost predictable. She had coughed the day before. I must have subconsciously heard it. On the third night, I dreamt I was eating the most delicious bowl of strawberries and cream I'd ever eaten. In the morning, there was strawberries in the fridge. Now, I don't buy strawberries as a rule. I'll eat them in restaurants, but I won't have them in my fridge. You buy them on a Monday, and by Tuesday night, they've grown their own mould colony and have elected a mayor. It's a waste of money. I checked my banking app to see if I had bought them half asleep the night before. No charge. I told myself I must have paid cash and forgotten. I ate one, and it tasted like a memory of summer, so sweet and fresh. On the fifth night, I dreamt of Beth. I dreamt that she'd won a ridiculous prize at a ring toss. I knew that wasn't true because when we went to the ring toss, she could not toss. In the morning, she sent me a photo of herself with a teddy as big as she is, and a message that said, "I'm finally a winner," a row of hearts. I asked which fair she went to, and she said it wasn't the same one. She'd gone to this new one with a new guy friend. I didn't ask for details. On the sixth night, I dreamt of rain. It poured in the dream, and everyone on the street ran. I dreamt I stepped under a doorway that didn't leak, and that the person beside me stepped aside so I could fit in. When I woke up and went to work, the sky broke while I was walking. The doorway I chose didn't leak. The stranger that was there moved over with a smile. He handed me a napkin. He said I looked like I needed a win today. That's probably when I stopped telling myself it was nothing. I still tried to pretend, but it wasn't true pretending. On the eighth night, I had a different kind of dream. I was in my room in the dark. I couldn't move. The floorboard by the door creaked. The sound wasn't loud, but it was near the kind of volume that fills the whole house if it's quiet. And then the dripping started again. It came from everywhere at once, as if every surface had been given one drop and told not to waste it. I woke up with my heart climbing the wall of my chest. I didn't sit up. I lay still and I listened. The house is old and does what old houses do. Pipes expand, nails settle, wood flexes. The difference was that I knew the rhythm of this house. This creak was not the same. I could point to where it came from in the dark. It was the board by the door. The rain was still pouring outside. I could see droplets dripping steady from the window frame. But this wasn't the same dripping. It was slow enough to make me count it, and then lose count. I didn't go to work that day. I sat on the sofa in a daze, hands shaking as I sipped the same cup of cold coffee I'd held for 4 hours. I didn't understand what was happening. I was so focused on the good things I was getting, I forgot I could have bad dreams too. I stayed up as late as I could, refusing to go into the bedroom. But by 1 a.m, I couldn't stay awake. I dreamt I was back under the bed. The air was hot and the smell of iron sat on my tongue. I was strapped to the same chair from my childhood. He was there, the grey man, standing in front of me, that emotionless stare piercing my soul. He took a step forward. I thrashed and pulled at my restraints, desperate to get free, but he just stopped, tilted his head. I woke up panting. My hair stuck to my sweat-covered forehead. My wrists ached, and by the morning, small bruises had formed like faint ligature marks. I came down the stairs to a small white envelope posted through my door with no stamp. Inside was a note that said, "Keep sleeping well." The font was cheerful. The ink smelled faintly of almond oil. I stood very still, holding it, and listened for the drip. Last night, I really didn't want to go to sleep. I made some tea, watched some TV program that didn't really require any attention. I texted until my phone felt hot in my hands. At 3 a.m, I was tired enough to promise myself that fear is fuel and sleep isn't the enemy. I lay down. I told myself that I had invented patterns because the fortune teller had given me a poem. I reminded myself that I'm not 12. I didn't dream. I woke up just before 5 a.m, absolutely exhausted. I lay there in the dark, willing myself to go back to sleep just a little bit longer. I squeezed my eyes shut, and that's when I heard it. The floorboard by the door gave a single, careful creak. I kept my eyes closed. I told myself that if I couldn't see anything, nothing could see me. Then the dripping began. It was closer than it had been. I slowly opened my eyes, barely moving. I tried to look at the slot of dark under the bed. The smell of heat and metal pushed up and over the edge like a breath. I reached one hand out and placed it flat on the floor, only to prove that I could. The wood was cold. And then something in the dark below touched the other side of the board as if answering the gesture. The board lifted against my palm with the weight of a measured hand. I pulled my hand back and sat up. I clicked on the lamp. The room was the same as it had been. The tall bookcase, a pile of clothes on the floor, the curtains, the bed. I told myself not to be dramatic. The fortune teller had told nothing more than a fairy tale. She could have said it to anyone, and of course it would work sometimes, because the world's full of coincidences. I clicked the light off and tried to remember the therapist's advice from so long ago. My eyes grew heavy. 5 things I can see. Lamp, door, bed, blanket, book. 4 things I could touch. My blanket, my hair, my t-shirt, my nightstand. 3 things I could hear. My heartbeat, my breathing, dripping. 2 I could smell. Iron. Rot. 1 thing I could taste. Old coins. No, I whispered. My eyes snapped open. The dripping sound was louder now, like something wet was seeping through the ceiling, except there was no stain or no leak. The smell, oh God, the smell. It filled my throat until I was swallowing it. It was the exact same as when I was a kid. Heat, dirt, the metallic tang of rust and blood. The floorboards creaked right outside my door. I held my breath and waited for the sound to stop, but it didn't. Each groan of wood bent closer, slow, deliberate. The therapist's advice was gone. The old woman's were all I could hear. Do not insult what listens. Some things are bored enough to answer. And I realised I had asked for no more bad dreams, but maybe I'd given it permission to step into the waking world instead. The door creaked open. The grey man stood tall, grinning, his teeth reflected in the moonlight. He uttered one word.
Ready.
And then he vanished. I think I screamed until morning. I decided to go back to the fair. I was going to find the tent, the old woman, the dove crow thing, and tell her to undo what she did. But when I got there, it was gone. The whole fair had packed up and moved on. I managed to catch the owner of the teacup ride before he drove off, and I asked him where they were going next. He made a comment about me being a carny chaser, and I clapped back with something witty. Honestly, I'm too exhausted to remember. Basically, I just wanted to find the fortune teller. He frowned at me like I'd just asked him where the dragons were kept. The fair doesn't have a fortune teller, he said flatly. I actually laughed, even though my throat felt like it was closing. Yeah, sure, old woman, white bird, creepy rhymes, you can't miss her. He shook his head, climbed into the cab, and muttered something about weirdos before slamming the door. The truck pulled away, leaving me in a half-empty lot with a stomach that felt like wet cement. I stood there for way too long, hoping maybe the strike tent would flicker into view if I just stared hard enough. It didn't. So now I'm stuck with this, whatever she gave me. I can't make sense of it. I can't make it stop. And the part that really scares me? If last night wasn't a dream, what will happen when the grey man takes me away again?
Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That was a little throwback to my too nervous to narrate days.
You can tell.
Quiet. Anyway, I decided to keep the original audio, but I changed the pacing a bit and added some sound effects and images for immersion.
The pacing change did not help.
Yeah, well, really, I didn't have a choice. I lost the original story, so I was working with what I had.
It is on Reddit.
Yeah, well, I know that now.
After you published it again.
Yes, thank you, Memory Police.
Your organizational skills remain a threat to the archive.
Anyway, if you enjoyed this one, please like, comment, subscribe, all that lovely stuff.
Tell them about Patreon.
Fine. Also, I have a Patreon where you can support the channel and get extra bits when I remember to post them. I also like ranting over there and posting strange creepypasta music videos.
Transparency detected. Rare.
Look, I'm being honest.
But Patreon helps fund content. Also, your chaotic audio experiments.
True. Every bit of support helps me keep making stories, music, visuals, and whatever this is.
This is not a business plan.
It still counts.
Barely.
Links are in the description if you want to support me there. No pressure, obviously.
Pressure has been removed. Guilt remains optional.
Leave them alone. Good night.
I did not like the grey man.